Today I'm going to talk to you about populism, particularly populism in Europe, and indeed particularly in the European Union. And I'm going to start now. The economic crisis hit us all in 2008. There was much alarm and despondency all round, but not really panic. In fact, people, the voters, decided that they wanted reassurance in those difficult times. They wanted a safe pair of hands. And so they stuck to mainstream political parties. In the United Kingdom, we had a Labour government and then subsequently a Conservative government. Mainstream. In France, the Conservatives were put out of office and the Socialists came in. Again, mainstream parties. Now, 6 years on, the crisis goes on. And it's not just an economic crisis either. But now people are starting to panic. The mainstream parties on the left and on the right of the political spectrum are seen as failures, particularly obviously in France, where President Hollande has a popularity rating, the lowest ever recorded, around 16%. But the same applies in other countries too. Therefore, we see the rise of what? Of populists. We might look at a few scenarios where populists will certainly be rising and perhaps coming to power. I'm going to take one scenario that is unlikely, impossible even, and a few that just could be. Let's look at the impossible first. The rise of neo-Nazis or a communist takeover. Most unlikely. We see an extreme right-wing party in Greece, the Golden Dawn. But it will never get the massive support needed, at least not in my view and that of most experts. Another scenario, a more likely one. The populists come into power in some form or other, and they turn out to be just as useless as all the rest. We have an example of this in the Netherlands, the LPF party, which was in a coalition in the Netherlands in 2002. They pledged to do all sorts of things, to throw out the immigrants and stop traffic jams, all of which proved a little difficult, and so that was their downfall. They promised too much and disappointed people. Another scenario, mainstream parties decide to revise their policies and compete with those populists. So they don't imitate the populist tactic of bashing immigrants, for instance, but rather offer people some useful alternatives, some answers to their difficulties and ills, offering, for example, higher minimum wages or better benefits, social housing and the like. A century ago, the big mainstream parties in power created welfare states in order to prevent misery of working class people, as Karl Marx had then predicted. The point is that if you reduce people's suffering, the populists are bound to lose. They will lose their raison d'être. We'll look at another scenario. The populists decide that they will become mainstream. Because once you're in office, realities will set in, difficulties will arise, and perhaps attitudes will have to change. if you look at Syriza in Greece right now, there we see too that that party and its leader are beginning to understand realities. Life is quite difficult once you're in power, as they are foreseeing. And then perhaps too we look at a last scenario where the populists do rather well, because they come into power as the economic cycle starts to pick up. That's what has happened also in South America. Take Argentina as a good example, and the Kirchners in power there. Just lucky timing, in other words. So what now then for Europe? Are we looking at a future of populists in power? Will we be governed by the likes of Nigel Farage or Marine Le Pen, or indeed Mr. Tsipras? It seems to me that if those things happen, then we really should start worrying, and that, I believe, is when people honestly will start to panic. So let's hope it doesn't come to that. Thank you.